Hello, everyone. I'm Lenny Pinna, and I'm the editor of this book, A Face from Uranus, correspondence between Tedd Burr and Henry Bellamann, 1943 to 1945. I'm also the screenwriter for the limited TV series In the Name of Jamie Wakefield, which is based on the letters published in the book. So, if you've already seen the pilot and episode 2 of In the Name of Jamie Wakefield, Too Pretty for a Boy, you're ready for episode 3, which I'm beginning now. If this is your first time dropping in, feel free to listen or watch, and you might want to go back and look at the pilot or some of the other dramatic readings at any time. So, I told you in episode 2 how I spent most of my um, energy really refining episode 1, the pilot, because that's what a producer needs to see. Uh, the other episodes are done, but they also still have work in progress. There can be some refinements, change of sequence, or some refining of dialogue, things like that. So I've been working on episode 3, preparing for these readings, and so I went to print out the copy today, and I'm out of printer ink. So I'm reading this off of my computer, which means you are right up to date with the latest version of episode 3. I'm calling it Arts and Science. Fade-in. Interior of a photography studio, Bellevue, Ohio, day. Ted stands at the counter. The photographer opens a large envelope. Photographer, I think you're going to be pleased. He takes Ted's new photos out of the stiff envelope. Oh, it's exactly what I wanted. I must say, you do look quite stunning. Thank you so much. I love it. I'm going to take a moment to show you the photograph of Tedd Burr that was taken in 1943. And yes, it is the cover of the book, A Face from Uranus. The photographer presents Ted with the sales slip. It's been my pleasure. You can see I took 10% off the bill since you are a returning customer. Ted smiles sheepishly. We cut to the interior of Henry's study, daytime. Henry enters carrying a stack of mail. Standing near his desk, he opens a large envelope and slides out Ted's manuscript. There's a close-up of the title, The Surf in Terror Fled, a novel by Tedd Burr. Henry turns over the title page and discovers a few pictures of Ted. Two small snapshots accompany his frowning senior year photograph. The snapshots depict Ted as he appears currently. Henry studies the photographs. Cut to the interior of an ice cream parlor in Bellevue. Jean sits in a booth, waiting. Ted arrives excitedly. Sorry I'm late. I picked up my new photos. Oh, let me see. Ted slides out the photos. Ted, you're so beautiful. You think so? I've never seen anything like it. I wanted it to look like an actor's photograph. That's exactly what it looks like. I'm going to send one to Henry Bellamann. I'm hoping maybe he could help me either as a writer or as an actor. The waitress arrives to wipe down the table. Hi, kids. Who's that picture of? It's Ted. Isn't he beautiful? I'll say, but you probably should put that away before they get ruined on a wet table. As the waitress finishes wiping the table, Ted slides pictures back into the envelope. He remembers to pull one out for Jean. The waitress leaves with her wet towel. This one's for you, Jean. Oh, Ted, thank you so much. Will you sign it? Sure. He looks around. I need a pen. The waitress returns with a couple glasses of water. Jean, excuse me, can we borrow a pen for a minute? I want Ted to sign his photograph. Here you go. Do you kids want your usual sundaes? Ted, I do. I do too. As the waitress exits, Ted touches the table. Still a little wet. I can wait till later. One moment, Ted gets up and uses a nearby table to sign the photograph. He ends his stylish signature with a flourish and presents it to Jean as he sits. Here you go. Oh, Ted, I'll cherish it forever. Jean leans over to give him a kiss on the cheek. Cut to the interior of Henry's study, day. Henry sits in the chair by the window, reading Ted's manuscript. Catherine knocks and enters. What have you got there? It's a novel from the boy in Ohio. That troubled boy from Bellevue? He wrote a novel? It's his first attempt. I told him I would read it to see how good or bad it is. It looks pretty lengthy. I'm sure it's some sort of wish fulfillment. Wouldn't it be more productive if you were working on your own novel instead of reading someone else's? Think of it as research. You said helping him with his plight might help me with my own. Yes, but I hope you don't get drawn in more than you bargained for. You don't need any more distractions. Time will tell. You don't have all the time in the world, you know. Are you referring to my health? No, I'm referring to your professional obligations. There are many people counting on you. Was there a reason you came in? Yes. I'm letting you know that I have a vocal coaching session this morning at 11 o'clock. Thanks for the warning. I'll probably go swimming. It's with the actress Lucy Ball. Oh? She's starring in a new movie with Gene Kelly and Red Skelton. How did this come about? She contacted Estelle for voice lessons, and Estelle recommended me. Good for you. Perhaps I'll wait to go swimming. I thought you might want to meet her. You know me so well. Yes, I'll leave you to your reading. Cut to the exterior of the State Theater in Bellevue during the day. Carrying the envelope with photos, Ted walks toward the State Movie Theater. The marquee advertises the new movie. Du Barry Was a Lady, starring Red Skelton, Gene Kelly, and Lucy Ball. Ted stops in the lobby to look at the movie poster. Crossfade to the interior of Bellamann's living room. Sitting at the piano, Catherine coaches Lucy Ball. Henry walks down the hall and stops to look in. Catherine. Oh, this is my husband, Dr. Henry Bellamann. Henry, this is Lucy Ball. Lucy. It's lovely to meet you. I enjoyed King's Row very much. Henry. Well, thank you. I'm delighted to make your acquaintance. Henry's working on the sequel to King's Row even as we speak. Really, you don't say. I'm sorry, I haven't seen your film yet. Oh, no need to be sorry. I didn't read your novel either. I saw the film. Close enough. If you do happen to see the film, don't be too impressed by my singing because it's not my voice. My songs were dubbed in with another voice. Except for the last song, that's my voice. Really? I didn't know they did that sort of thing. It's the first time they've done it at MGM. That's why I'm here. I see. Well then, I shall leave you to your work. It was a pleasure to meet you, Lucy. It was a pleasure meeting you. Kitty, I won't be back for lunch. I'm meeting John Fletcher. You are? He called. He's in town. How lovely. Have him give my regards to Charlie. I miss seeing her. I will. I'll let you get back to your work. Lucy, shall we? We shall. Lucy waves with her fingers goodbye to Henry. He smiles. Cut to the interior of the Burr home. Day. Not wanting to be seen, Ted rushes through the living room en route to his bedroom. Coincidentally, Ted starts up the staircase just as his brother Jerry is descending. His mother Helen enters from the kitchen. Ted moves his envelope to the opposite side, making it less noticeable to Jerry. Neither acknowledge each other. Ted, excuse me. Jerry avoids eye contact but feels brushed aside by Ted's quick pace. After Ted passes, Jerry turns his back to glare and make a face at Ted from behind. By this time, Helen reaches the bottom of the staircase. Was that Teddy? I don't know, was it? Is that any way to answer? Jerry continues to pass by her. It is to me. Jerry exits, and exasperated, Helen exits back to the kitchen. Jump cut to the interior of Ted's bedroom. Ted sits at his desk typing, and we hear his voiceover. Dear Mr. Bellamann, I'm sending you my new portrait, the one I had taken to commemorate my life in case I was drafted. Fortunately, the Army didn't take me, but you did, and I'm so grateful. Cut to the interior of a restaurant in New York City. Day. Henry and the poet, John Gould Fletcher, finish ordering their lunch from the waiter, who takes their menus. I'm glad you were available to meet. I was only too happy to get your call. I needed to come back to New York again, desperately. That sounds ominous. You know, over the years, I've always come for inspiration. This time I came for regeneration. You do seem troubled. Believe it or not, my depression started all over again after I won the Pulitzer. Ah, I see. At first, I felt the joy and celebration of it all, but not long after it felt like it heralded the end, as if it signified the culmination of my work. I must admit, something similar has been afflicting me. The enormous success of King's Row has cast a giant shadow over everything. I can now see how much I got comfortable with my work being liked by more and more people. Through the years, my creativity settled into an aesthetic which satisfied a wider range of taste, even though personally I felt I was losing my intuitive impulse. Perhaps the way for us to go forward is to return to our roots and start the process all over again. Perhaps, or perhaps we no longer have the need or want to produce anything new at all. Perhaps breathing, eating, and just living life is enough. John, for heaven's sake, you can't be serious. No wonder you're depressed. That kind of thinking would certainly depress me. John suddenly bursts into uncharacteristic rolling laughter. Henry looks around uncomfortably to see who might be disturbed by John's outburst. Thank you, Henry. Oh my goodness. I haven't laughed like that in years. What's so funny? I guess I just needed to hear those words from someone else. And I guess you sounded like my mother. I'm already feeling better. I wish I could say the same. The waiter returns with their drinks. John offers his glass. Henry joins him. The glasses clink. Cheers. Sound fades in. A bright rendition of Mozart's Exultante Jubilante 165K first movement, and it underscores the following montage. We're at the interior of Tedd's bedroom during the day. Tedd wraps a framed photograph for mailing. We are now in the Burr home where Tedd quietly walks down the steps, passing his high school picture. He stops for a moment to look at it and then smiles as if to say, "Goodbye forever." He then looks over the staircase railing to make sure no one is around before descending the rest of the staircase. We're now outside the Burr home where Tedd is passing his grandmother sitting in her usual chair staring forward. "Hi, Grandma." He gives her a kiss on the forehead. She turns her head. "Don't tell anyone. I want to move to New York. Wish me luck." We're now at the downtown Bellevue streets where Tedd is walking past the street where Joan commits suicide. He stops, looks down the street at the side of the building. "I'm sorry, Joan. This is a voiceover. I'm sorry, Joan. I hope you're at peace now. If there's anything you can do to help me leave this place, I'd be so grateful to you. Amen." Cut to the exterior of the State Theater in Bellevue. Tedd stops to look at all the movie posters outside the ticket office. In Tedd's imagination, one of the posters transforms into the poster size of his new photograph. Tedd Burr starring in The Surf in Terror Fled. Tedd smiles. We're now in the interior of the post office, Bellevue. Tedd hands his package to the postal clerk to pay for postage. Postal worker, "Will that be first class, please?" We then are at the exterior of the post office. Tedd exits with a lightness of spirit. He takes a moment to stop and look at the town and all the people moving about. He begins to imagine. The imagined reality is the town of Bellevue freezes into a tableau. All of the people are frozen. Tedd, with the music, is freely moving through the town, smiling at everyone. Now we cut to the doctor's office in New York City, day. The doctor listens through his stethoscope as he checks Henry's back. Breathe again. More deeply. The doctor removes the stethoscope from his ears and hangs them about his neck. He moves to face Henry. "Your breathing seems shallow. I'm concerned you're not getting enough air in your lungs. Have you been experiencing any difficulty breathing?" "Occasionally when I'm going up steps, but I mostly take the elevators." "How about when walking?" "I do tire more quickly, so I stop to sit on benches." "And are you swimming?" "Occasionally." "How's your breathing then?" "It seems fine." "That's good. You should swim more." "How about my heart?" "No real change. But shallow breathing could put more strain on your heart. I'm recommending that you use an oxygen tank at home." "Is that really necessary? It would be cumbersome to have to move around with that." "I think it's more beneficial for you to increase lung capacity while you're sitting or writing or whatever you do when you're at home. We'll assume for now that you're taking in sufficient oxygen when you're walking out of doors, so you won't need it outside." I'm suddenly feeling much older. Don't dwell on the age. No age is a problem when you are in good health. Focus on your health and keep swimming. Cut to the exterior of Terminal Tower, Cleveland, day. Ted exits Terminal Tower among the hustle and bustle of downtown Cleveland, with sidewalks filled with pedestrians and streets filled with moving cars. We cut to the interior of Lyle and Haley Music Store, Cleveland. Ted peruses piano concertos. He chooses Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1. Cut to the exterior of a coffee shop. Ted looks through the window and sees a full crowd of men having lunch. Ted is wearing makeup and his hair is styled in a full bouffant pompadour. He checks his appearance in the glare of the glass and musters up the confidence to walk into this coffee shop. Cut to the interior of the coffee shop. Many of the men turn their heads to look at Ted as he searches for a seat. He sees one seat at the crowded counter. After sitting, the waitress brings him a menu. "Hi, hon. Here's our menu. Can I get you some coffee or something to drink?" May I have some water, please?" "Sure thing, hon." Ted studies the menu. Men at the counter can be seen staring at him. The waitress returns with the water. "Here you are. Ready, hon?" "Yes, may I have?" The waitress leans in very close to Ted's face to get a good look at him. Have the baked chicken platter with mashed potatoes and corn, please." "Any gravy on the chicken or the mashed potatoes?" "On the mashed potatoes, please." "Anything else to drink?" "I'd like a hot tea with milk, please." "You got it, sweetie." Ted watches the waitress walk away. She stops to whisper to a man. They both glance over at Ted. Ted quickly looks down and takes out the Tchaikovsky Concerto score to study. Cut to the interior of the Ansonia Hotel lobby during the day. Henry enters the lobby en route to the elevator. As the elevator door opens, a bearded man dressed in Wagnerian opera-style clothing, he's rumored to be the illegitimate son of the composer Richard Wagner, haughtily struts past Henry and through the lobby. Henry's incredulous expression is received by the uniformed elevator operator, William. "Good afternoon, Mr. Bellamann." "Good afternoon, William. I see we are graced again today by the great bastard of Mr. Wagner." William cordially smiles. Interior of the elevator. "How's your day, sir?" "I wish I could say fine, but I'd be lying." "I'm sorry to hear that. I'll say a prayer for you, Mr. Bellamann." "Thank you, William. I appreciate that." Jump cut to the interior of the hallway, Ansonia Hotel. The elevator doors open. Sound of a man's voice vocalizing is heard down the hallway. William. "You take care of yourself now, Mr. Bellamann. And please, tell Jocelyn I said hello." "I will do that." Henry hears Lauritz Melchior vocalizing operatic scales. Henry's facial expression immediately turns to stone. Cut to the interior of the Bellamann apartment, the foyer. Henry enters the apartment, locking the door behind him. Jocelyn approaches Henry to help him remove his overcoat. "Mr. Henry, how did it go with the doctor?" "Not so good. He said my breathing is shallow. He wants me to use an oxygen tank." "Oh, that's not so bad. I know folks who bring their oxygen tank to church service. It don't stop them from singing and praising and clapping their hands, and even doing a little spirit dancing now and then. They're still living life." That's encouraging. Jocelyn hangs his coat in the closet. "You know, you don't have to let anything keep you down. No, sir. That oxygen tank just gives you some extra air so you can continue to breathe the breath of life. As long as you have the breath of life, you have the spirit of life in you." Thanks for trying to cheer me up. "And you got a package over there." Henry retrieves some mail and a package on the table. He sees Bellevue, Ohio on the package. He smiles. Henry. "Oh, before I forget, William wanted me to say hello to you." "He did?" "Yes, he did." "Oh, I left the potatoes boiling on the stove." Jocelyn hurries off to the kitchen. Henry walks down the hallway toward his study. Cut to the interior of the Cleveland Public Library. Already holding a couple of books, Ted takes a large volume from the reference shelf. He moves to a side table, setting down the books. He opens the Who's Who from 1942. He flips to the B's to find Henry Bellamann's biography and picture of Henry in his 40s. Ted stares at Henry's picture. Cut to the interior of Henry's study. Henry sits at his desk. He cuts the envelope with the letter opener and takes out Ted's new portrait. He studies the photograph, then looks up as Ted appears in the room, rendered in black and white. He stands in profile, the same profile as the photograph. Thank you for the photograph. It is very fine looking. Ted turns to look over his shoulder at Henry. It is, as you would agree, very beautiful. Henry glances at Ted's high school photograph already placed on his bookshelf. Even so, I like the high school one better. The boy with the glasses is a troubled, lost soul sort of person. Ted looks forward to stare at his senior photograph. Henry peers again at the new photograph. Here is a face that might have come from the planet Uranus. So foreign. Ted looks back at Henry. Henry looks up at Ted. And in the final analysis, so unappealing. Ted is disappointed and hurt, yet remains stoic. Henry rises and moves to the bookshelf. No, I like the boy with the glasses, who looks out fearfully to a world that may be very hard on him if he isn't careful. Henry places the studio portrait on the shelf near the other photograph. The sad thing about this beautiful photograph is whom and how it attracts. The real men of this world who you like are attracted by the truly feminine. Henry turns around to fix his gaze on Ted. I don't know how frank you have been with me. It would appear at the moment that you are not a practicing homosexual. What's a homosexual? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Homosexuality, as an amateur in these matters, is a departure from the norm, where a man loves other men. Love for you, however, is still a mental state, not an actual experience. Like the love I have for James Rogers, the high school boy I told you about? Precisely. It only exists in your mind. I did fall into the clutches of a neighbor boy who made me do certain things with him. Is that homosexuality? I wonder if a reading of Sigmund Freud's Study in Homosexuality would clear matters up for you. I'm very interested to learn about Freud and this homosexuality you speak of. I'll send you a copy. Ted fades out as Henry walks back to his desk and sits. Crossfade to the interior of Ted's bedroom during the day. Ted looks in the bureau mirror as he puts on facial makeup. Henry, who is now rendered in black and white, sits on a side chair watching Ted. I can very clearly see why you use makeup, although I'm sure most people would agree that you are much better looking without it. Ted doesn't look at Henry, but he hears his words. I've seen various boys wear makeup, but I've never felt it really improved them. It only leads to misunderstanding. I suppose that certain kinds of men would naturally think that you were available. They must feel cheated when you won't play. Ted stops his activity and turns, looking directly at Henry. Henry, suppose a girl dresses as an obvious prostitute and goes down to the New York waterfront. Do you think she should be offended or hurt when she is taken to be that which she is not? Ted is visibly affected by Henry's words. Wouldn't it make common sense to make some outward concessions to convention. You probably hate the word convention, but conventions are the protection of all individuals. Ted looks away from Henry and back to the mirror. I can't imagine that wearing makeup is really one of your deep down necessities. As Henry fades out, Ted begins to wipe off the makeup. Cut to the interior of Henry's study at night. He is sitting in his chair reading Ted's manuscript. We dissolve to an imagined reality, a scene from the novel. It's the interior of Sidney French's boudoir at night. Sidney, as played by Ted looking like his portrait, and Michael are lying in bed naked right after having sex. Would you consider us now a couple? No. Why not? We're from two different worlds. A relationship would be impossible. I may come from the other side of the bridge, but I'm a decent man. You're a salesman. What's decent in that? I'm an honest salesman. I never lie to anyone. That's noble of you. But I need someone of my caliber, a celebrated talent like me. Together, we will travel the world and make exquisite music and an extraordinary fortune, and will engage in exotic and ecstatic and eternal lovemaking. We already engage in exotic and ecstatic lovemaking. We could make it eternal if you'd like. I'm not going to settle for less than everything that I desire or dream of. So tell me, Sidney, if your life is so grand and worldly, why did you lower yourself by coming back here to live? I didn't come back here to live. I came back here to rest. I was exhausted from giving myself endlessly to my adoring fans, who need me and my music and my beauty and my elegance, to inspire them to live beyond the constraints of their conforming little lives. So why are you still here? Why have you lingered for so long? Because I suffer tragically from the family curse. What kind of curse? I can't control my impulses to acquire everything I see or desire. I can no longer afford my excesses. Michael begins to chuckle, then laugh. Why are you laughing? What possibly could be so funny about my misfortune? You're in luck. Luck? How so? I can't be bought. I'm not for sale. I come free of charge, so you can afford to have as much of me as your tragically cursed little heart desires. Michael's eyes sparkle. Sidney's lip curls. They slowly embrace and kiss passionately. Michael rolls Sidney to his side, facing away, and slides closer to penetrate Sidney. Sidney arches his back and his neck in ecstasy. This is the end of the imagined reality. We dissolve back to the interior of Henry's study. Sitting on his high-backed chair, Henry appears disturbed. He tosses the script onto the side table. He's caught in an internal struggle. He closes his eyes, then reaches down to open his pants and begin stroking himself. We dissolve to the interior of the Bellamann home hallway. Henry walks down the dimly lit hallway to his bedroom. Cut to the interior of Henry's bedroom. Now dressed in pajamas, Henry gets into bed. He turns off the night lamp and closes his eyes. There's a flashback to the exterior of a park, Spartansburg, South Carolina, during the day. 30-year-olds, Henry and Albert, sit on a park bench. Albert: I've lived in Paris, traveled to Berlin, Vienna, and Amsterdam. I loved each of them, but I experienced them alone. I want to experience life with someone. What if I could get you a teaching position at Chikora College? You could live with me and Kitty to get started. I've never taught. What would I teach? Fortunately, I was just made head of the music department for this upcoming semester. You could teach some of my piano classes and a class in musical appreciation. That's very thoughtful, but I'm not an accomplished pianist like you are. You know how to play the piano, and you know how to read music. You just need to teach what you know, and I'll be able to help you. With a gifted student, I can advise or assist you. I don't need to work immediately. I can still settle here in the area. That's right. You don't have to concern yourself with making a living. You have unlimited family funds you can rely on. Why, after all these years, are you still throwing my family's wealth in my face? Have I ever stopped caring about you because you came from less means? No. Have I ever acted superior? No. Have I tried to buy your affection with gifts? No. No. I've written you poems, and I've given you my heart. I'm sorry I resorted to saying such things. I could move anywhere. Why do you think I'm moving to South Carolina? To be near you. And I want you as near as possible. If you teach at the college and live with me and Kitty, we would be even closer. But Henry, me teaching piano, I'm much more suited to teaching English or poetry or literature. I know, but I'm head of the music department, not the English department. Do you really think it'd be copacetic for me to live with you and Catherine? Copacetic, what does that mean? It means completely agreeable. I've never heard of the word. It's a relatively new word. Bojangles Robinson says it all the time. Ah, well, that explains it. I like it. I think it's a good word. So, will it be copacetic? Yes, I think it will be copacetic. We could at least give it a try and see how it goes. Albert quietly thinks. Are you intending to be in my life for a long time? I think you know the answer. I've written several poems about it. Then for my sake, our sake, please consider my offer. So when do I get to meet Mrs. Bellamann? Henry smiles broadly. Albert begins to smile. Jump cut to the interior of the Bellamann's campus home, South Carolina, day. Henry and Albert stand in the foyer with Catherine. Henry, Kitty, I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend, Bertie. Bertie, this is my wife, Kitty. Lovely to meet you. Welcome to our humble little abode. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Henry has told me so little about you. I look forward to learning more. I've spent much of my time in Europe the last 5 years, so I've been out of circulation. I'm grateful to you and Henry for helping me to reestablish myself here in the States. We're delighted to help. Henry, I'll show Albert where he'll be staying. Catherine, dinner will be ready shortly. Cut to the interior of the Bellamann guest bedroom. Henry, we haven't used this room very much. Who did the decorating? Neither of us. We are kept so busy with our work. We've made no effort to change the furnishings that the college provided. I might like to change a few things in here. You can fix it up however you like. I'm sure Catherine won't mind at all. Henry opens the closet door. Unfortunately, this closet isn't very large. I hope it'll be enough for your things. Albert looks inside the closet. Henry moves behind him. As Albert turns back, Henry moves closer to embrace him. Albert is receptive. They kiss. I hope you'll feel quite comfortable living here. I'm sure I'll get accustomed to it. End flashback. This is now a time when Ted and Henry are going to meet in imaginative space. You may have noticed in the last episode, or the last part of episode 3, that Ted and Henry have begun to enter into each other's worlds in sort of black and white apparitions. But this time they are going to meet mutually in space, and it will be a full color scene. So we're going to pick up with interior of Ted's bedroom, night. Ted, dressed in his pajamas, lies on his bed with an open book on his lap. He stares into space. He decides to go to his desk. He sits in front of his typewriter. He takes a sheet of paper and scrolls the page into place. He types. We hear the voiceover. Dear Mr. Bellamann, here I am home again with many games of solitaire facing me in the coming weeks. I miss not having my novel to work on, and I suddenly feel it is difficult to read. It is always like that. Either I read constantly or not at all. Cut to Henry's bedroom at night. Now awake, Henry gets out of bed. He puts on his dressing robe over his pajamas and exits to the hallway. Cut back to Ted's bedroom. Ted types. We hear voiceover. I wait breathlessly for your letters since it seems so an impossibility that you bother with me. It was that conversation between Drake and Jamie that made me turn to you. I felt it must have come from some experience of your own. It was so true. Cut back to Henry's study at night. Henry sits in his chair reading the last of Ted's manuscript. He takes off his glasses. He has a very serious look on his face. He glances at Ted's Uranus photograph. He gets up and walks to his desk. He pulls out typing paper. He puts his typewriter in front of him, and with a determination, he rolls the paper into place. He begins to type. The words are typed as he speaks. Henry's voiceover. My dear Tedd Burr. We dissolve back to Ted in his bedroom typing the words, I am one of dreams and moods. We now dissolve to this imaginative reality, and a sound fades in, and it's a piano playing Debussy's Nocturne. This is an imaginary great hall of arts and science at night, a handsomely appointed great room with two grand pianos on opposite sides of the room. Surrounding the room are shelves of books and photographs, paintings, and sculptures. There is a sensuous upholstered chaise lounge on one side of the room and an imposing high-back upholstered chair on the opposite side of the room. Heavy burgundy-colored floor-length curtains cover unseen windows. A camera on a tripod, a world globe, and a human skull are also present. The room is lit sensuously. Ted, dressed in his silk pajamas, enters from one side. Henry, dressed in his pajamas with dressing robe, enters from the opposite side. Henry carries Ted's framed studio portrait. Ted begins to saunter about. The scene progresses as would a filmed stage play likened to the period works of Chekhov, Ibsen, and Strindberg. Ted. I am one of dreams and moods, Mr. Bellamann. I try to be rational and honest in dealing with myself, but when I am of dreams, a chance name or thought may send me into wild imaginative trances. I lie down and close my eyes. I am not Tedd Burr. I am a beautiful woman, desired, loved, cherished. Shall I ever be loved? Loved by many in all shadings of love? He looks toward Henry. Or could I but lie in one man's heart, as tragically as he lies in mine? Henry observes silently. Ted leaps up and thrashes about. "Ah, but what impossible sentiments! If only I could control myself! I know these dreams aren't practical, but you are. So it is a battle between you and my dreams. I swear, there is a big me and a little me. The big me is wise but weak. The little me is young and tantalizing." Henry turns away. "Don't leave me now, Mr. Bellamann. Yes, I am dramatizing. I shall laugh in a moment. No, I don't want to laugh. Perhaps it is just the suspense of waiting to hear what you have to say about my novel." I said to you in the very beginning that I am not a physician, nor a psychiatrist, and I am not attempting to usurp their function. At first, it seemed to me that you do not require either. Today, I am not so sure. Henry holds up the Uranus photo. I suspect that this is Sidney French, the protagonist of your novel. Yes, it is. I don't think Sidney French is who you believe him to be. Anyone this ill-adjusted to his environment makes everyone around him equally ill-adjusted. I exaggerated Sidney's worst qualities for dramatic effect. I didn't write about Sidney French because I like to write. I thought if the novel had any dramatic possibilities that I could play Sidney French, and that might be the start of a unique acting career for me. Listen, Ted, I'm an old man, relatively speaking. I've lived a lot and I've seen a lot. I can only talk truth to you by hurting your feelings worse than any surgeon could ever hurt you. If you can take it, if you're strong enough, it may be good for you. If you feel it is not the right comment for you, you are free to reject it and go your own way. Up front, I must tell you that I knew Jamie Wakefield personally. He was a good friend of mine. He was quite talented, but he missed all boats, and the latter days of Jamie were not pretty. With all due respect, Mr. Bellamann, we are not talking about Jamie Wakefield now. We are talking about Sidney French. So then, let me talk about Sidney French. I'll start with the obvious. There is no such world in which Sidney French could ever exist. Perhaps if there were a world where there were three sexes, Sidney might pass, but there can never be such a world. Why can't Sidney rightfully exist as a fictitious character in the world of a novel? Even in the world of fiction, Sidney would be considered an aberration in society. Your Dr. Gordon was an aberration in society, and yet he existed as a character in King's Row. Let's stick to your novel. I think your main problem with your novel is that you have not put on paper what I imagine was in your mind. You said that the Frenches were in the top echelon of society, but in effect, you have presented the Frenches as nothing more than a lower middle class family with the worst breeding and the most outrageous manners. I wrote about society as I see it here in Bellevue. Yes, it is merely a masking, and the people behind it are fairly low class. However much you may have drawn from real life, the book entirely lacks reality. Most of the characters are paper thin, and their talk is completely artificial. I can't imagine any really thoroughbred person putting on the pure, snobbish talk of the Frenches. Fine people are never haughty, only false pretenders are. Do you think people are genuinely nice? I think they can be fairly nasty. I caught the Frenches with their pants down. Maybe once upon a time they were a beautiful family, but they've had their day in the sun. Now, behind Windy Hill sits a family coming ever nearer to its extinction and death. Also, I find the musical setup incomprehensible. You claim Sidney was a talented and discriminating musician, and yet he was overly concerned with Debussy's Clair de Lune. Henry moves to his grand piano. Clair de Lune has only a slight poetry. It's not representative Debussy. It's not even good Debussy. I met Debussy once in Paris. He dismissed Clair de Lune as a sugar plum, pas important. Henry begins to play Debussy's Preludes. Why couldn't Sidney have played the Pagodas or the Magical Preludes? Why are you picking apart Clair de Lune? I love that music, and it makes no difference to me whether Debussy cared for it or not. I do, and so do many, many other people. Ted crosses to the other piano and begins to play Clair de Lune. Henry stops playing and eventually crosses to Ted. Most people don't know those other compositions you mentioned. So if I put Clair de Lune in my novel and readers can hear it in their imagination because they are familiar with it, then that's enough for me. Then there are the colloquialisms which are completely out of place. Only in vaudeville would one speak of a great pianist as a talent. Sidney was not a great pianist. If only he had the goal to become a great pianist, what a brilliant career he might have had. Still, when playing Clair de Lune, Sidney could still dream. Ted, the boy you portrayed is not just a fairy, and it's spelled Fairy, not Faery. That's something else. He is also a fool. He demanded attention and approval from everyone, and then he did everything to lose it. And the attention he did get, he hated. I know Sidney is a fool. I wrote him knowing it. I think Sidney is doomed, which is why I ended his life. The story of Sidney French is pure escapism. It is a retaliation against society and is dreadfully catty. In fact, this book's only value is that it is a pathological document. It is the frank exposition of a sick psyche. Even in the world of psychiatry, which is not surprised by anything, this boy is a sick boy. All of his actions, every one of them, are actions of hysteria. I think you may have done yourself a fine service in writing it. It is now out of your system. He walks away. Ted rises and follows him. Why are you critiquing Sidney as if you're critiquing me as the author? I told you I wrote Sidney as a means to an end, as a part I could play in the drama. You cannot wish to be like Sidney French. You cannot sanely wish such a life or such an attitude. I'd rather see you shredded by German machine guns than grow into someone as freakish as Sidney French. I only wish to play Sidney as an actor. I must say in all honesty that it has no possible chance at publication. From a literary point of view, it isn't any good. From a psychological point of view, it is a glimpse into the heart of an inferno. Isn't your opinion just one man's opinion? No. My opinion is not a personal opinion. It is a professional opinion based on professional training and experience. It is a literary judgment. Just like I know bad piano playing when I hear it. Henry walks toward the bookcase. Ted observes. Henry regains composure and addresses Ted again. Your biggest mistake is that you tell far too much. Sex situations cannot be handled so roughly. This kind of writing has been confined to the bottom shelf of distasteful literature of very little importance. Ted darts toward Henry on the offense. Fine, that's all I want, to make some money and get a start. My book may not be good, but look at these. He runs his fingers across the shelves of books. I think many of these are pretty awful. Why shouldn't I take a chance and give it to a publisher? What I have been trying to say without hurting your feelings is that you do not write well. It is the very fabric of your writing that I think is immature and far from ready for any kind of publication. I recall only one sentence that stands out. Each day he swore there was no God, each night he prayed. That's a fine sentence. It is strong and dramatic. Henry moves to sit on a chair, breathing deeply. I have to conserve my strength because I'm still recovering from a severe illness a couple of years ago. I have a tricky heart that doesn't permit me stairs or even to pick up a suitcase. So when I take time out for this, I am doing it out of friendship. Please don't fight back unnecessarily. Ted stands quietly before Henry. I'm truly grateful for the time and effort you make for me. Ted, I have a certain amount of experience in life. I know certain things. I would not tell you anything that isn't genuine. When I am in doubt, I say so. Ted kneels at Henry's feet, looking up at him. I'm selfish, Mr. Bellamann. I don't want you so ill that you can't continue to help me. Your friendship is the most beautiful thing in my life. You gotta believe that. We are two fairly sensible people, aren't we? Don't you think the best friendship is a completely honest one? So please understand when I say that your opinion is just that of one man. I respect it tremendously. But perhaps someone else should knock me down. I expect you to be hard-headed about a lot of things. It's all right if it can be combined with a capacity for learning. If you have no further use of my novel, could you return the copy? At this moment, I feel that I must at least submit it to some publisher. If I didn't, there may always be the question of maybe what if? Would you like me to make some notes? Yes, I would love to have your notes. I shall wait breathlessly for them. Henry slowly rises to leave. In due time. I am a busy man. Ted rises. I pray that I do not lose you by this. You know, if you wish me to stick around to see what we may work out for you, you must not be resentful. Ted thrusts himself forward, draped over the chair. If you only knew how much I want you to stick around. I am not resentful. No, not a bit. I'm just so thankful. Henry slowly walks toward the doorway. Over his shoulder. I will send you a grumpy photograph of me as a scolding present. Not quite. I don't scold. Henry exits. Ted slides down into Henry's chair. Oh, I sigh with relief. Oh, Mr. Bellamann, you are a light. And so we dissolve to Ted's bedroom during the day. Helen, his mother, brings Ted a letter. Teddy, another letter from New York just came for you. We then cut to Henry's study. Henry is still wearing the dressing robe as he writes. He also now has an oxygen tube. We hear his voiceover. My dear Ted, I have not been well for several days. I am too occupied to sit at my desk, for I have small, not serious, heart disturbances which annoy me and keep me in search of an oxygen tank for convenience sake. But I am not an invalid. Please feel free to write whenever you like and as much as you like. We cut back to Tedd's bedroom. Tedd is still dressed in his silk pajamas, and he's writing fervently. We hear his voiceover. My dear Mr. Bellamann, I am so glad to hear from you, but very sad over your state of health. Your invitation for letters as often as I care makes me most happy. Today, I'm writing my thoughts, both gay and disturbing. For the last few days, I have been in a state of utter depression. We dissolve to Henry's study. Henry is now with his oxygen tube, sitting in his high-backed chair, reading Tedd's letter. He looks up to see Tedd standing near the bookcase, holding Freud's book. Tedd. Last night, I began on the basic writings of Sigmund Freud. Thank you for sending it to me. I never would have found him. Henry nods, accepting the acknowledgement. I can certainly read his observations as coldly as the next person, but perhaps with a little more understanding. Tedd opens the book to a particular page. I struck on this: a female mind in a male body. I thought this combination of thought and words originated with me, but in Freud there are exactly the same words. Henry looks noticeably uncomfortable. So much of what you have said to me has come from Freud, am I right? I have not attempted any diagnosis beyond what you yourself have indicated to me. We dissolve to Tedd's bedroom, and this is one of those shifts, those imperceptible shifts of location while they're still talking. Henry is sitting with his oxygen tube in the corner of Tedd's room. Tedd is now standing in front of the bureau mirror. Henry, I think you see yourself pretty clearly. I would just like to see you well adjusted to your surroundings and living happily. You have already taken your first and best step. You have stopped wearing makeup. Your next step would be to cut your hair shorter. Tedd turns around with a look of incredulous wonder. To eliminate all of the confusion you cause for yourself and everybody else by secretly trying to attract the attention that you really don't want. I am certain that your simple, boyish self is the most attractive version you can make of yourself. We have Tedd's wonder of expression cutting to the next scene of a barber shop where Tedd is now sitting in a barber chair facing the mirror. The barber has already cut the top and sides of his hair. He is presently cutting the back of Tedd's hair. Not too short, please. We're cut back to Henry's living room during the day. Henry plays Debussy's Pagodes on his piano. He is not wearing the oxygen tube, but the tank is near him. Catherine enters with Henry's mail. Henry plays for a minute before finishing the piece. Lovely. Thank you. Reminiscing about Debussy again? Not really. Oh, just a random desire? Let's just say you were right. About? The present is alluding to the past. How so? The boy from Bellevue. Is he helping you with your writing? I can't say precisely yet, but there does seem to be a strange serendipity to his entering the picture at this time. Can you speak more specifically? It involves Debussy. I'm listening. The protagonist of his novel is a concert pianist who is enamored with Debussy's Clair de Lune. The character is an extremely distorted version of Jamie Wakefield. Well, that's saying something. His name is Sidney French. Okay? The surname French vis-a-vis Paris Mitchell. Oh, that is an odd coincidence. Tedd Burr's family lineage is also German. Catherine raises an eyebrow. And he was very close to his maternal grandmother who lived with his family. This is all quite interesting indeed. I do hope it will help to inspire or motivate you to work. I hope so too. Speaking of serendipity, you have another letter here from Ted. Henry reaches for the mail. And I have another voice lesson with Lucy Ball at 11. Ah, I guess that's my cue to exit. Don't forget to take your oxygen tank with you. Cut to the interior of Henry's study. Henry, with his oxygen tank, sits in his window chair, smiling as he reads Ted's letter. Ted appears behind the chair and comes around to face Henry. How strange that I should have made you such an infinite part of me. You are almost like a silent partner within my life. I want to tell you everything, for it seems unnatural not to. I'll begin with, and the scene dissolves to, the exterior of J&L Steel Building in Cleveland during the day. It is a flashback. Ted rereads the newspaper clipping in his hand. He is not wearing makeup and boasts his well-groomed shorter hairstyle, presenting a more boyish look. We hear Ted's voiceover. I'll begin with my answering an advertisement by a Cleveland Steel Corporation for office clerks. We cut to the interior of J&L Steel personnel office. There's an establishing shot of Ted being interviewed by Mr. Hack and a woman. We hear Ted's voiceover. I was briefly interviewed and accepted for a very well-paying position. I was completely at ease. We jump cut back to Henry's study. Ted is relating his story to Henry, and Henry's smiling. My new appearance gave me confidence, thanks to you. Without you, none of this could be possible. The flashback continues. We're now at the interior of a restaurant in downtown Cleveland. Ted enters a busy restaurant during the lunch hour. No one pays particular attention to him as he proceeds to sit at the counter. A waitress approaches him, smiling. He smiles. We hear his voiceover. While in Cleveland, I ate at a fashionable restaurant just to test myself. Could I walk in there? Would everything be all right? We quickly cut back to Henry's study, and Ted tells Henry, it was. I went mostly unnoticed. Henry smiles. We cut back to the interior of a movie theater in downtown Cleveland. A scene from Phantom of the Opera is on screen. We hear Ted's voiceover. I saw the wonderful movie, The Phantom of the Opera. Cut to the exterior of the movie theater. Ted exits the theater under the marquee showing The Phantom of the Opera starring Claude Rains. Claude Rains. We have a quick cut to Henry's study where Henry is enjoying the moment of connection. I so enjoyed the acting of Claude Rains, your Dr. Tower in King's Row. Back to the flashback. It is the exterior of the Burrs' home. A neighbor woman is talking to Helen, Ted's mother, outside of the home as Ted approaches. Helen has a concerned look upon her face. Ted senses her discomfort. We hear Ted's voiceover. As I arrived home, a neighbor was discussing the war with my mother. She informed me that one of the Rogers boys had been seriously wounded in Sicily. Rogers? The name stuck in my throat. We cut to Ted's bedroom at night. On top of his bed, Ted lies on his stomach crying. We hear his voiceover. All night I was in such agony. No, not James Rogers. The young man I loved when I was in 8th grade and still do to this very day. We cut to the ice cream parlor in Bellevue during the day. With some anxiety, Ted waits for Jean to arrive. Jean enters brightly. Hi, Ted. Wow, your hair is so much shorter. What made you do that? I just needed a change. I showed your photograph to all the nurses at work. They were shocked. They couldn't believe how beautiful you look. They said you look like a movie star, and they hope to meet you someday. I told them I'd bring you around sometime. Ted seems uncharacteristically quiet. What's the matter? I hardly know where to begin. We'll start with whatever bothering you. The waitress arrives. Hi, kids. You want your usual? Jean. Yes, please. Ted. I think I just want a cup of plain vanilla today. Really? No chocolate sauce? No, thanks. My stomach's a little off. Then plain vanilla it is. The waitress leaves. So what's wrong? I heard back from Henry Bellamann. He doesn't like my novel. Really? Why not? He doesn't like any of the characters. He thinks they're unlikable. He doesn't like the dialogue either. He says everyone sounds artificial and pretentious, and he doesn't like Sydney. Actually, he disdains Sydney. He thinks Sydney is just too awful to even exist in society. Oh, Ted, I'm so sorry. I thought he was going to help me. Honestly, I don't care what he says. I don't agree with him. He's only one person. I think lots of other people would like it. That's what I think. I told him I'm still going to try to get it published. That's right, Ted. Don't give up. Don't let him dash your hopes. He said he'll give me some notes to help improve it. Wait a minute. If he dislikes your novel as much as you say he does, why would you want his notes? If I were you, I wouldn't trust his opinion. Ted looked surprised by her words. You know what I think? I think he's probably jealous of you. I'll bet he's threatened by a talented younger writer. Really, you think? I do. Thank you, Jean. You're making me feel a little better. The waitress arrives with their order. Here we are. Plain vanilla. I hope this helps your stomach. Ted nods. Jean, if you decide you want some of mine, feel free to put your spoon in. Ted nods again. So, something else bothering you? Last night, I heard that a soldier from Bellevue was badly injured in the war. They said his last name was Rogers. I'm worried that it could be James Rogers, who was a few years ahead of us in school. It's not James. It's his older brother, John. Really? How do you know? You know Janice Hilder? Her older sister Francine and John Rogers were high school sweethearts. They went to the prom together. Janice says Francine is completely distraught by the news. She's been writing to him faithfully all this time, waiting for him to return. It must be so terrible for her. Janice said James is coming home on furlough for 10 days to be with the family. They're praying for John to pull through. I didn't know John, but I so hope he makes it. Janice said even if he does make it, he'll be permanently disabled. He lost both legs. Oh no. James is actually doing very well. He received his wings in a commission. Oh, that's wonderful. Still, I feel bad for the entire family. We just don't know what can happen from one day to the next, do we? Jean, I have some other news, but it might not be such good news. What do you mean? I went to Cleveland yesterday to interview for an office position at J&L Steel, and they hired me right on the spot. What? Oh my God. Ted? No. I'm sorry. Jean breaks into an extended cry. Ted puts his hand on her shoulder. As she regains her breath, she uses her napkin to blow her nose. Oh, Ted. What am I going to do without you? Don't worry. I'll come back and visit you, I promise. I'm sorry I'm so emotional. I guess I knew this day would come sometime. I'm sad to leave you, but I've got to work and make some money and begin to make a life. I can't just wait around here hoping for my novel to be published and bought by Hollywood. That dream might never come true. I know. This is the real world. We just have to accept it. She looks down at her ice cream. I can't eat now. I lost my stomach. We dissolve to the interior of Henry's study during the day. Henry frowns. Ted looks out the window. Although I felt bad about Jean, I really could only think about James Rogers. I can't tell you how relieved I was that he was not injured. Still, I'm dreading his return to Bellevue next week. I don't wish to see him. Even more, I wish for him not to see me. We dissolve to an imagined scene. It's the exterior of a pond in the winter in Bellevue. Ted walks near the ice skating pond. Henry follows behind him. I'm afraid if I catch even a glimpse of him, I'll be undone. All the fires that cooled during these past years will rage again inside of me. James skates on the frozen pond in the background as Ted turns to look at Henry. Henry continues to watch James skate. I don't know why I have any feelings for him. He never hardly saw me. It's a torture to love him, in the way that Freud spoke of, a purely mental state. Ted turns back and watches James skate. There's a close-up of Ted's eyes tearing as he watches James. James is the one person I can love quietly, to stay in the background, out of sight, and just pray for his safety and happiness. I want nothing of him or from him now. With contempt, Ted turns to face Henry. Now that I am looking like this, Henry stares at Ted. Ted passionately confesses, I would give my life if during the next 10 days I could be the woman he desires to love, spiritually as well as physically. Henry remains silent, still, staring. There, I said it. Woman. It's still in me. Henry looks at Ted disapprovingly. I've conformed externally, but I am bitter, and I still dream of it. Henry turns and walks away. Ted cries. Please don't hate me. I love so helplessly and hopelessly. End of imagined reality. We dissolve to Henry's study during the day. Henry sits in his high-backed chair with his oxygen tube. He finishes reading Ted's letter. He sets it aside on the table. He stares into space in deep remembrance. Flashback. A title card, Fulton, Missouri, 1910. We dissolve to the exterior of a train station in Fulton, Missouri during the day. 18-year-old Henry walks into the scene. At a distance, he sees Albert with his parents. Albert is waiting for his train's departure. Albert spots Henry in the distance. He excuses himself from his parents and quickly runs towards Henry. You came. I promised. An awkward moment of silence. Even though I call myself a poet, the right words aren't coming to me at this moment. Words aren't necessary. Perhaps I'll borrow some. Parting is such sweet sorrow. Henry smiles. Albert's father. Albert! Albert turns back to signal, just a moment. Then back to Henry. It's time for me to go. Henry extends his hand. Albert's hand joins with Henry's. Goodbye, Bertie. Goodbye, Henry. Albert puckers his lips to send an air kiss. Henry blushes with a smile. Albert turns and runs off. Henry watches him return to his parents. Albert turns back and waves from afar. Henry waves. Close up. Tears begin to well in his eyes as he maintains his slight smile. We dissolve back to Henry's study. Henry is still staring. Tear rolls down his cheek. We now crossfade to an imagined reality. It's Tedd's bedroom at night. Tedd is now transformed into his imaginary female presentation. He wears a white silk robe and lies face up on his bed. A shaft of moonlight streams through the window. James Rogers, in military uniform, enters his bedroom. While James admires Tedd's beauty, he removes his jacket and his shirt, then slowly, lovingly lies close to Tedd on the bed. James gently opens Tedd's robe and slips his hand under the fabric to caress Tedd's feminine breasts. He leans in and kisses Tedd on the lips, ever so gently, and then begins to gently kiss Tedd's neck. With tears of joy in his eyes, Tedd sees over James' naked shoulder. In the background, in the shadows, a photograph of Henry staring. Close up, Henry's stony stare. End of the imagined reality. Tedd, as himself, is dressed in his pajamas. He lies on his bed, paralyzed with shame and guilt, staring at Henry's photo. We crossfade to the interior of the Bellamann's living room at night. Henry sits at his piano with his oxygen tube, playing a Chopin nocturne. He looks up to see Tedd standing near the piano. I must say, I am quite proud of you. You are beginning to blend into the world around you. Any progress I've made is because of you and your belief in me. Now that you have secured a decent position, you must forget the past, the longings, the heartaches. With earning a good income, you will be able to afford to enjoy your life and have your privacy. I'm happy I'll have a well-paying job, but I still feel as if I'm being condemned to a life of artistic sterility. Nonsense. If you truly have genuine artistic ability, it cannot be taken away from you. Look at Dubose Hayward. He sold insurance until he wrote Porgy and Bess. If you still want to be a writer, write. But first, read. Read everything you can. I recommend that you read The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. You will see how well she handled the subject of homosexuality, honestly, yet delicately. Ted moves closer to Henry. He stands over his shoulder, watching him play. Thank you for still caring about my writing, even though you were disappointed in me. I was not disappointed in you, and I did not attempt to discourage you. I told you unpleasant truths only to make you work harder at your craft. You must develop a sharp sense of self-criticism so that you can withstand the harsh criticism of others, whether it be accurate or distorted. Ted sits next to Henry on the piano bench. I still have so much to learn from you. I hope you will stick with me, even when I'm working in the steel mill, when I have no real prospects to achieve artistic success. Don't be silly. I don't give you my time and attention because I think you might become a talented and an accomplished artist. I give you my time and attention because I like you as a person, the person you are deep down. I'm here for the noble person that I know you will become. I know I'm a better person because of you. You should read Thomas Mann's Death in Venice. It's the story of an older German professor who falls in love with a young boy. Let your hopes to write lie in reading good literature. I always draw inspiration from your encouragement. Good. Now let me know your address when you get settled in Cleveland. You will be the first to know. Ted's apparition disappears. Henry speaks alone. I am faithfully yours. We cut to the exterior of Bellevue train station, day. Members of the Burr family see Ted off. Helen fusses with Ted's clothing and hair while Martha holds Tommy. Floyd carries Ted's luggage to the train car. Helen, Teddy, please let us know when you get there. I will, Mom. Promise you'll write letters from time to time. Tell us how you're doing. I will, I promise. Martha's in tears. Me and Tommy are going to miss you so much. Aren't we, Tommy? We're going to miss Uncle Teddy. Not as much as I'm going to miss you both. Tommy, you'll be a good boy now. Ted kisses Tommy on the cheek, kisses Martha on the cheek. Helen in tears. Teddy, I'm so proud of you. I know your father's not going to tell you, but I know he's also proud of you. Thanks, Mom. You're a good boy. I know you'll be responsible. Now you go and make something of yourself. I'm going to give it my best, Mom. That's all we expect for you, is that you give it your best. Floyd returns. Train's boarding now. Ted nods. He hugs his mother, then Martha and Tommy. He turns to his father. There's an awkward moment before Floyd extends his hand to shake. Ted shakes his hand. Good luck. Let us know if you need something. Thanks. All aboard! Ted slowly boards the train and looks back. Helen and Martha wave. Floyd nods. Cut to the interior of the train car. The conductor is near Ted. Tickets! Tickets out! Ted is ready with his ticket. Conductor smiles. Where to? Cleveland. Off to the big city now, are we? You be careful now when you get there. Ted nods, then quickly looks out the window as the train slowly departs. Buildings and sights of the small town pass by, and soon flat open fields extend to the horizon. Ted takes a book out of his bag. A close-up of the title, The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. Ted opens to the first page and begins to read. Fade out. End of episode 3. Well, we've now reached the halfway point of the TV series. If you have any questions or comments or any perceptions about what you're detecting over the 3 episodes, please write your comments below and we can have a discussion about that. And stay tuned for some Q&As coming up about the writing process and some of the aspects of like them seeing each other and blending in the scenes, and possibly a live Q&A in the future. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining me. See you again.